So that's sister then?
Yes.
M. Catherine Road.
Yeah.
Sister.
Yeah.
Sister M. Catherine.
Yeah.
Good morning, Paul. This is Bob Gotting reading the Omaha World.
Trump's remarks came as he triumphantly decision by the heating and air conditioning company Carrier to reverse its plans to close a furnace plant here and move to Mexico, helping keep 1,100 jobs in Indianapolis. About that many Carrier positions at that plant and another facility in the area will still be cut, however. Under terms of the agreement, which still have not been finalized, Carrier would receive a $7 million tax incentive package from the state of Indiana in exchange for making a $16 million investment in the facility. Though Trump said Thursday that amount would probably be higher. In remarks delivered inside the Carrier facility, the president-elect said more companies will decide to stay in the United States because his administration will lower corporate taxes and reduce regulations. But he also warned that businesses that decide to go abroad will pay a price through a broader tax on imported goods. Companies are not going to leave the United States anymore without consequences, Trump declared Thursday. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Trump said he decided to intervene after watching a television news report that reminded him that he had vowed during the campaign, "We're not going to let Carrier leave." Trump's determination to use a mixture of incentives and tariffs to keep jobs from going overseas represents a sharp break with the free market wing of the Republican Party, including senior congressional leaders. On Thursday, top Republicans offered careful responses to the Carrier deal. "I think it's pretty darn good that people are keeping their jobs in Indiana instead of going to Mexico," said House Speaker Paul Ryan, emphasizing that the party is hoping to pass comprehensive tax reform that would be a boon to all businesses. Ryan has repeatedly criticized President Barack Obama for allegedly trying to pick winners and losers in his stimulus package and other economic policies. The Carrier deal was sharply criticized by some conservatives who viewed it as government distortion of free markets, as well as liberals who derided it as corporate welfare. "I think it sets a pretty bad precedent," said Dan Ickerson, president of the Herbert A. Stifel Center for Trade Policy Studies at the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank. "I don't think we should be addressing issues like this on an ad hoc basis. It certainly incentivizes companies to make a stink and say, 'We're going to leave too. What are you going to do for me?'" Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, who ran for the Democratic presidential nomination, accused Trump of reversing course on a pledge to punish companies that outsource manufacturing jobs. In the case of Carrier, Trump had said he would force the company to pay a damn tax if it closed the plant. Instead of a damn tax, the company will be rewarded with a damn tax cut, Sanders wrote in an op-ed for the Washington Post. Wow, how's that for standing up to corporate greed? Privately, some business leaders were also unnerved. It's uncharted territory for a president-elect to get involved personally in social engineering with a single company, said an advisor to major corporations who spoke on the condition of anonymity in order not to anger the new administration. Now that Carrier is no longer the political piñata, the advisor added, chief executives are asking, who's next? Timothy Bartek, an economist at the nonpartisan W.E. Upjohn Institute for Employment Research at Kalamazoo, Michigan, said the vague threats from the president-elect could stymie corporate investment as firms seek to avoid any decisions that could draw the ire of the White House. What are these consequences? Who's in charge of them? Bartek asked. One of the worst things for corporate investment is uncertainty, he added. You would hope that the government would not add to the uncertainty. In Indianapolis, where Carrier has been a staple of the business community since the 1950s, the deal was celebrated. Our union at every level, including our local union leadership, ought to keep that plant open, said Leo Gerard, international president of the United Steelworkers, which represents the factory's workers. Though it did not endorse Trump, Gerhard said the union supports crucial aspects of the president-elect's agenda, including preservation of manufacturing jobs, scrapping free trade deals, and spending on infrastructure. If this step is any indication of what's to come, we look forward to working with him, Gerhard said.
In national news briefs, one on the lighter side, beaver inside store sees fake trees and loses it. A badly behaved beaver took a shot at holiday shopping. The beaver was apprehended at a Dollar General store in Charlotte Hall, Maryland, the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office said. Apparently, after browsing the selection of decorations and artificial Christmas trees and trashing the place, the deputy, with help from store employees, blocked the rodent in the aisle until animal control workers arrived. It walked up to the warden, who put the catch pole on it and removed it from the store, said Tony Malaspina, the county's animal control supervisor. All joking aside, the beaver was safely rescued by animal control and released to wildlife rehabilitation, authorities tweeted. In ailing Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, was evacuated from the South Pole to New Zealand, where he was hospitalized Thursday in stable condition. Aldrin, 86, was visiting Antarctica as a tourist when he fell ill. He was flown to Christchurch from McMurdo Station, a U.S. research center on the Antarctic coast. Tour company officials said Aldrin had fluid in his lungs but was responding well to antibiotics. Aldrin and Neil Armstrong became the first men on the moon on July 20, 1969. Armstrong died in 2012. From Malibu, California, a California mountain lion placed under a death sentence for killing nearly a dozen alpacas owned by a Malibu woman was granted a reprieve Tuesday when the woman announced that she wouldn't act on a state-issued permit giving her the right to kill the animal. A neighbor had offered to shoot the big cat, known as P45, for Victoria Van Perling, but she told reporters it was never her intention to have the cougar killed. Instead, she said, she hoped game officials would capture it and get it away from her ranch. She indicated that public outrage might have played a role in her decision, saying she was surprised by the vitriol. The largest and most expensive destroyer built for the Navy has resumed its voyage after a breakdown in the Panama Canal. The Navy said Thursday that the USS Zumwalt departed from Panama after repairs to the propulsion system by the ship's crew and a team from General Electric and the Naval Sea Systems Command. Lieutenant Julie Holland said the ship would arrive in San Diego in coming weeks. The 610-foot destroyer built by Maine's Bath Iron Works was in the Panama Canal when it lost propulsion on November 21. The U.S. Naval Institute said the engineering failure locked both propeller shafts, forcing it to transit the canal with the help of tugs. And from Gatlinburg, Tennessee, crews discovered the remains of 3 more people as they searched the rubble of wildfires that torched hundreds of homes and businesses near the Great Smoky Mountains, bringing the death toll to 10, officials said Thursday. Authorities set up a number for people to report missing friends and relatives. After following up on a dozen leads, they said many of those people have been accounted for. They did not say whether they believed anyone else is still missing or may have died.
Support for repealing the Affordable Care Act dropped significantly among Republicans immediately after the November election, according to a new poll. The data also revealed that although a large majority of Trump voters say they view President Barack Obama's health care law negatively, they like many of its provisions. According to the data collected by the Kaiser Family Foundation, 69% of Republicans supported repealing President Obama's signature healthcare law in October. A month later, only about half supported a full repeal. This is a new thing, first time we've seen it, said the foundation's president, Drew Altman. He cautioned against reading too much into a single data point and said his organization would ask the same question next month to see if the pattern holds. We had a great debate over whether to even report it because all of a sudden there it was, and it was quite significant. The results are surprising because President-elect Donald Trump's promise to repeal and replace the healthcare law has been one of his closest policy positions, reinforced by the announcement this week that he had chosen one of the fiercest critics to head the Department of Health and Human Services. The drop doesn't mean people flipped to favoring the law. Instead, there was an increase in the number of Republicans who thought scaling back the law was a good idea. The poll also revealed an apparent contradiction in Trump voters' feelings about the law. According to the poll, 81% had favorable opinions about the Affordable Care Act and half wanted to see it repealed. But when Trump voters were asked how they viewed specific provisions, many were popular. For example, more than 2/3 of Trump voters said they like the health insurance exchanges where people can shop for insurance, the financial help the law provides to low and moderate income families to help pay for insurance, the elimination of out-of-pocket costs for preventive medical care, and the ability of young adults to stay on their parents' health plan. A majority were in favor of the ban on insurers denying coverage to people with pre-existing medical conditions. The caution here for repealers is that at the end of the day, people will care more about their insurance, their access to care, and their economic security than they will about the ACA, Altman said. So what actually happens and is done to people's coverage will trump their political dislike of the ACA. Finally, the poll examined how people might react to particular changes that could occur if the health law were to be repealed and replaced. For example, among those in favor of repealing the law, 38% changed their minds after hearing that it would mean people with pre-existing medical conditions could be denied insurance. Nearly a fifth changed their mind after hearing that 20 million people who gained insurance through the expansion of Medicaid and by buying insurance on the exchanges set up by the law would lose coverage. Overall, the data show that Americans remain stubbornly divided on the future of the healthcare law. About half the public want to see the law remain as is or be expanded. 43% want to see it repealed or scaled back. The debate over the future of the health law has been divisive. But Altman noted that if Trump's healthcare team also attempts significant changes to Medicare and Medicaid, it could make current day controversies seem mild. If people think the ACA is a big debate, they haven't seen anything yet, he said.
In world news briefs from the Washington Post, as the regime of Syrian President Bashar Assad tightened the noose on rebel-held enclaves in the city of Aleppo, its relentless shelling of civilian areas claimed yet another casualty. According to news reports, Anas al-Bashar, a 24-year-old social worker who dressed as a clown to entertain children, was killed in a suspected regime or Russian missile strike in Aleppo. Al-Bashar's death was confirmed in a tweet by a man who identified himself as al-Bashar's brother. My brother, Anas al-Bashar, who was the reason why besieged children smiled, killed today, Tuesday, in Aleppo due to the Russian Assad shelling. The offensive has caused hundreds of deaths and spurred a desperate exodus of tens of thousands of people seeking safety. From Amman, Jordan, the world's population grew slightly to 7.4 billion in 2016, the UN said Thursday, with a substantial youth bulge challenging political and social systems across the planet. The United Nations Population Fund released its 2016 State of the World Population Report in Amman, Jordan. The report said the world's population grew 1.1% to 7.433 billion from 7.349 billion the previous year. The report focused on the well-being of 10-year-old girls as indicators of development, success, or failure. It says 89% of the world's 125 million 10-year-olds live in developing countries where girls face obstacles to equal education, healthcare, and safety. Failing to invest in girls is nothing less than planned poverty. Unless we invest in girls, we're planning to have a poorer future, said Daniel Baker, Regional Humanitarian Coordinator and head of the fund's Jordan Country Office. From Medellin, Colombia, authorities prepared Thursday to transport the bodies of dozens of victims of this week's air tragedy in Colombia as grief turned to anger amid indications that the airliner ran out of fuel before slamming into the Andes. Bolivian aviation officials announced that they were definitely suspending the charter company that operated the flight. Grieving relatives of the dead spoke out in disbelief after a recording of conversations between the pilot of the doomed flight and the air traffic controllers, as well as the account of a surviving flight attendant, indicated that the plane ran out of fuel before crashing late Monday, killing all but 6 of the 77 people on board. From Paris, French President Francois Hollande announced Thursday that he would not seek a second term in next year's presidential election, saying he hoped to give his Socialist Party a chance to win against conservatism and extremism by stepping aside. The 62-year-old president is the country's least popular leader since World War II. What's at stake is not a person, it's the country's future, he said. And from Moscow, an unmanned Russian cargo spaceship heading for the International Space Station broke up in the atmosphere over Siberia on Thursday due to an unspecified malfunction, the Russian Space Agency said. The cargo craft broke up shortly after launch at an altitude of 118 miles over a remote region in Siberia that borders Mongolia. It said most of the spaceship's pieces burned as they entered the atmosphere. The cargo ship was to deliver several tons of fuel, water, food, and other supplies. It was set to dock with the space station Saturday. Roscosmos did not describe the malfunction.
From Islamabad in Pakistan, the morning papers were giddy with hyperbole on Thursday over news that Donald Trump has spoken to Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif by phone a day earlier and showered compliments on a country he once accused of betrayal and disrespect, even offering to help the nuclear power solve its problems abroad. "Call me anytime," Trump tells PM, shouted the Express Tribune, describing the instant rapport between the two leaders during the congratulatory call initiated by Sharif. His office then released a readout of the call. The newspaper also suggested that the U.S. president-elect, who called Pakistan a fantastic country with fantastic people, might prove to be Islamabad's good friend. By the end of the day, though, the official tone had become more circumspect, and commentators were skeptical that Trump, who has little foreign policy experience and close business relations with Pakistan's arch-rival India, really was ready to weigh in on the thorny issues that have long roiled the Muslim-majority nation's international relations. "Our relationship with the United States is not about personalities, it is about institutions," said Nafiz Zakaria, a spokesman for the foreign ministry. Describing Sharif's gesture as a courtesy call, Zakaria said Pakistan would welcome any effort by Trump to ease regional tensions, but the spokesman added, "We do not comment on bilateral relations between sovereign countries." Khurshid Mohammad Kasuri, an analyst and former foreign minister, observed that although Mr. Trump is a warm-hearted person, he lacks expertise in foreign policy and is not yet in office. Noting the obvious excitement shown by Sharif's office over the conversation, Kasuri said, "One nice call is not something we read too much into." Trump, he added archly, could have been equally effusive with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The reaction in India, not surprisingly, was cooler still. India and Pakistan have been at loggerheads over the Himalayan region of Kashmir for decades, but India has always opposed Pakistan's desire to have the United States or other countries play a mediation role. Tensions have escalated in recent months, with deadly border attacks against Indian forces and harsh repression of protesters in the Indian-administered portion of Kashmir. Insofar as the fantastic conversation is concerned, I would reserve my judgment, said Vikas Swarup, a spokesman for India's Ministry of External Affairs. We have seen only a one-sided version of the conversation. Swarup said India would welcome a dialogue between Pakistan and the United States to resolve outstanding issues, but specified that the most outstanding issue was Pakistan's continued support for cross-border terrorism. Many comments posted on social media in India were derisive and mocking, as were comments from Pakistanis. Some made fun of Sharif, who was accused of hiding financial assets abroad, casting him as desperate for foreign friends. Some derided both leaders as corrupt scammers who would get along famously as a result. So where is the new Trump Tower in Pakistan actually going to be? One post asked.
Time now to turn to local and legislative news from Lincoln. Nebraska needs an emergency no refusal center where authorities can hold people with mental illnesses who are particularly agitated and potentially violent. But it also needs more drop-in and respite centers where people with mental illnesses can seek support and safety from peers. And it needs to update rates paid for services and treatment of people with mental illnesses and substance abuse problems. Those are among the recommendations from a legislative task force on the state's behavioral and mental health system. The group released a report Thursday. State Senator Kate Bowles of Lincoln, who chaired the task force, said the task force heard from several people about the need for a no-refusal emergency protective custody center. Such a center could handle a person in the throes of a mental health crisis who has been denied placement in a hospital. The denial could be because the person is too violent or because the hospital is full. Bowles said authorities currently have few options for such people. If they have committed a crime, they can be jailed or placed in the state prisons system's diagnostic and evaluation center under a program that provides safekeeping for county inmates. Neither is ideal, she said. Jails are not equipped to handle mental health problems, and the diagnostic and evaluation center already is overcrowded. The only other option is to release the person in the same condition they were in when authorities were called, she said. Along with a center that could take such people before hospitalization, the task force recommended creating a high-security residential facility for people leaving Lincoln Regional Center, the state psychiatric hospital. The proposed facility would help people make the transition from the highly structured hospital setting to the community. Elizabeth Lay, the Platte County Deputy County Attorney, told the task force that Nebraska has one such transitional program, but it is often full or will not take some people. Bowles said the task force also heard concerns about the need to review payment rates to behavioral health providers. Current rates have not kept pace with the cost of providing services, which leaves providers without the resources needed to develop new services, she said. The task force called for addressing the problem in multiple ways. One involves boosting the rates for services that are the most severe underfunded, a strategy that state officials used recently to bump up payment rates for halfway houses and medication management. Another calls for the state to pursue a federal waiver so that Medicaid dollars can be used for behavioral health wraparound services. Waivers around states to cover a broader array of services for specific groups of people than is possible under the traditional medically oriented Medicaid program. The federal matching dollars available through Medicaid would make state funds stretch further, Bowles said. Bowles said she expects legislative proposals addressing at least 3 task force recommendations. She plans to have a bill expanding the use of peer-supported housing, similar to 2 programs in Lincoln. The Kia House provides a place where people can stop by and get support when coping with flare-ups of their mental health problems. The Honu home provides this respite for people with mental illnesses who have been recently released from jail or prison. Senator Sue Crawford of Bellevue plans legislation aimed at expanding the behavioral health workforce, while Senator Sarah Howard of Omaha is working on a bill to make Medicaid dollars available to pay for peer support services. The services are provided by specifically trained people who have dealt with mental illnesses or substance abuse problems themselves. The task force was charged with monitoring programs in addressing issues and gaps identified in a legislative performance audit last year.
November was among the state's warmest on record, meteorologists say, but Nebraskans might want to bundle up for the cold air December will bring. The forecast for Friday into early next week calls for Lincoln highs in the 40s and a slight chance of freezing precipitation Friday and Saturday mornings has prompted city crews to spread winter brine to try and stave off slick roads. The cold will be a stark change following Lincoln's fourth warmest November on record. Last month's average high temperature hit 59.5 degrees, or about 9 degrees above normal. The capital city began the month with highs in the upper 70s, then tied an all-time record of 80 degrees on November 16, before eking out a 60-degree day on November 26. And Lincoln wasn't alone. Omaha, Norfolk, Grand Island, Hastings, North Platte, and Valentine also enjoyed November warmth well above normal. November also marked the 15th straight month of warmer than average weather in Lincoln. The meteorologists and climatologists tracking the trend said that's the equivalent of pulling on a slot machine 15 pulls in a row and winning, said Ken Dewey, applied climate science professor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We've never seen it, he said. November joined June of this year in ranking among the 5 warmest months in the Lincoln record book. You have to go back to 1992 to find 2 months of record warmth in the same year. The trend in Lincoln and other Nebraska cities followed the pattern reported across most of the country, where stations everywhere but in the deep southeast reported among the warmest Novembers, said meteorologist Barbara Mays of the Nebraska National Weather Service in Valley. And that follows similar global patterns, May said. In Nebraska, credit persistent warm air high over the state for keeping us warm, May said. November's warm air prevented the typical Canadian snowpack that pushes the cold onto the plains and into Nebraska. We need that snow to get the really cold air down here, May said. That Canadian cold, however, is now pushing south toward the North Dakota border, Dewey said. Warmer Arctic Ocean waters this fall delayed the formation of that cold air, but the jet stream, which kept the cold away from creeping south in November, weakened near the end of the month, he said. That moved central Canada's cold air toward North Dakota. The enemy lines are closer, Dewey said. Though December might seem cold to Nebraskans after the warm November, he said, we can expect a good old-fashioned winter. It won't be like last year's mild December. A week from Friday, Lincoln and Nebraska will likely see highs below freezing, while neighbors up north in Montana and Winnipeg, Manitoba, face sub-zero highs dipping to -20. Don't panic, Dewey said. There will be warm spells, brief intermissions. Much depends on how much snowfall Lincoln and other parts of Nebraska receive. The first hint of snow is in next week's forecasts, and if it plays out, it could start a trend. Should we get heavy snowfall, then we will lock in a very cold winter, Dewey said. You may wish for a white Christmas, he cautioned, but if you're averse to cold, be careful what you wish for.
From Ogallala, Nebraska, one of Nebraska's largest farm and ranch operations fetched $37,555,000 in bids at auction Thursday. The auction of Thomas Land Company, a 28,645-acre operation that overlooks Lake McConaughey, attracted international interest, but drew a mostly regional crowd of 300 people to the Keith County Fairgrounds. The operation's 45 square miles of ranch and farmland would roughly cover Omaha from the Missouri River on the east to Interstate 680 on the west, and from Dodge Street south to the Douglas-Sarpy County line along Harrison Street. Hall and Hall Auctions offered the land in 50 parcels, and bidders were permitted to bundle the tracts across parts of Keith, Perkins, and Dual counties into any size. Bidding took nearly 7 hours to complete. In the end, 19 bidders were alone on the leaderboard. The average price per acre was $1,405. The property included grassland, non-irrigated cropland, and center pivot irrigated cropland. Bill Sheridan, a Mason, Michigan auctioneer who helped with the sale, said the $37.5 million in bids was a fairly accurate indicator of the value of the operation. He said Hall's inside appraiser estimated that the property would sell from 34 million to 38 million. When you gather this many in a hall like this and give everybody an equal opportunity to bid against one another, you will come up with a true indicator of what market value is today, Sheridan said. Sheridan said the agricultural land market has softened in recent years because of weaker commodity and cattle markets. So the attitude in the country of buying land is not quite as aggressive as it was a few years ago, he said. Bidding, although spirited at times, advanced at a glacial pace. People had more time to deliberate and we captured more market value, Sheridan said. Auctioneer Spanky Assiter of Canyon, Texas, cajoled bidders by taking advantage of the opportunities the diverse farm and ranch operation would provide their own businesses. Don't wake up in the morning and say, dang, I wish I'd given $5,000 more, he said. We broke the operation up to give you the opportunity to buy the land of your dreams. The first round of bidding brought offers for all parcels totaling 19.8 million. Then one bidder offered 21 million for everything. Another group of bidders pushed the buy it all total to 28 million. 6 hours later, the buy it all bidders were out of the picture and dozens of others carved out parcels of the operation and raised the final total to 37.5 million. Owner Lola Thomas, who lives in Miami Beach, Florida, attended the auction. She and her late husband, Michael Thomas, put together the operation starting in 2005. Michael Thomas was a 1958 graduate of Ogallala High School. He died at age 74 in 2015. As the auction opened, Thomas addressed the crowd tearfully, thanking the people of Keith, Deuel, and Perkins counties for making my husband so happy in his last years. She said afterward that she was pleased that neighbors and local farmers and ranchers purchased most of the land. I absolutely wanted the neighbors and local producers to be able to stay in the game and increase their involvement in Nebraska agriculture, she said. It was time to sell, she said. I was very happy for what my husband and I did in Nebraska, and I'm very happy to see it culminate today in this auction, Thomas said. I hope the people that purchased the property will help it grow as much as my husband and I tried to do. Thomas's attorney, David Domina of Omaha, said she accepted the majority of the bids and considered it a successful sale. The sale featured 26,739 deeded acres and 1,906 leased acres, including 3,647 acres of irrigated land, 11,705 dryland acres, and 13,293 acres of ranch land. The grassland plus hay and harvested cropland provides grazing and feed for 1,250 cow-calf pairs. 27 center pivot irrigation systems water the irrigated corn and soybean land. Nebraska has about 49,100 farms and ranches. The average operation consists of about 920 acres.
Nebraska authorities arrested a lieutenant in a Mexican drug cartel who's been on the run for 4 years, the Seward County Sheriff's Office said. Jesus R. Buena Peregrina, 39, was convicted of dealing 20 kilos of cocaine after being deported for prior felonies, according to a news release. Authorities say he is a member of the Sinaloa cartel, sometimes described as the biggest international drug trafficking, money laundering, organized crime syndicate in the Western Hemisphere. Wednesday afternoon, the Seward County Sheriff got a tip from Lancaster County Sheriff's deputies that Buena Peregrina was passing through and pulled over the car in which he was a passenger. The car was westbound on Interstate 80, the news release said. Deputies also arrested the woman driving the car, Vanessa E. Lopez Pina, 27, also of Arizona, and are holding her on suspicion of being an accessory to a felony. The Seward County Sheriff's Office said she tried to conceal his identity but did not say how. Deputies said they found a fake passport and IDs on Buena Peregrina and took him and Lopez Pena into custody, then notified federal authorities. Both remained at the Seward County Jail Thursday night. Buena Peregrina, a Mexican citizen, had been deported in 2002 and again in 2005 after he illegally re-entered the U.S. near Nogales, Arizona, according to federal court documents. Named for the region of Mexico where it was founded, the Sinaloa cartel is a coalition of drug lords working together, according to Inside Crime, which studies organized crime in Latin America and the Caribbean.
The Henry Dorley Zoo and Aquarium has partnered with United Way of the Midlands to give free zoo memberships to students in 31 of the poorest Omaha area schools. The program replaces the zoo's popular free admission days. The Take Your Family to the Zoo partnership provides family memberships for third grade students in schools in areas where 85% of students or more receive free or reduced priced lunches. I think it has the potential to be over 2,000 memberships, said Dennis Pate, the zoo's CEO and executive director. Pate said that instead of people getting a free trip to the zoo just for showing up on a particular day, this targets families who might not experience the zoo otherwise. It's sort of a new audience, Pate said. We're not taking away from any of our other programs. We're trying to open the zoo up to the whole community. Lena Thompson, director for the 211 call center for the United Way of the Midlands, said the program gives children and families from these schools an opportunity to have some of the same extracurricular learning experiences that others have. In the first month of the program, more than 800 memberships have been requested by students at the selected schools. United Way hopes the program will also help educate schools and families about its 211 hotline and the services it has for families in crisis. The hotline connects families with health and human services programs. To sign up for the membership, parents of students must call 211. The program's pilot year began November 1 and will run until November 2017, Pate said. For now, it involves third graders, but that may change in the future. That grade, Pate said, seemed to have a curriculum that would benefit a lot from a zoo visit.
The Nebraska Board of Pardons said no Thursday to a former Lincoln man's attempt to commute his second-degree murder sentence. Terry Taylor, who is on parole and living in Texas, asked the board to commute his sentence to a number of years so he could eventually get off what is now lifetime parole. The three members of the board, Governor Pete Ricketts, Secretary of State John Gale, and Attorney General Doug Peterson, said essentially they would be content to have Taylor remain on parole for the rest of his life. Taylor, 53, killed Ben DeBates Jr. on December 21, 1984, stabbing him 51 times. He was released from prison in 1996 after serving 11 and a half years, including county jail time, and has been on parole since then. My personal opinion is that I like the fact that you're on parole, Ricketts said. I like the fact that you're out, and I like the fact that you can be a member of society, but I also like the fact that we can keep tabs on you. What Taylor did doesn't happen every day, he said. People don't do this. And the fact that you have at one point of this in your life that exposed that kind of violent crime gives me cause for concern because the three of us, our job is to protect the public, Ricketts said. The board could have considered setting a hearing for a later time on Taylor's request, and in the meantime, getting an opinion from the Board of Parole and from DeBates supervisors, Gale said. Peterson was not willing to consider even a hearing, he said. This was a young man who was killed brutally, is 6 feet underground, and this guy served 12 years and has been able to go on with his life, Peterson said. Taylor was granted parole at an early time in his second-degree murder sentence, Gale said, which has been less likely to happen during the past 20 years. You're very fortunate that you have your freedom. You have your job opportunities, he said. This was a pretty cold-blooded killing. In terms of mitigating circumstances, I don't find them at this point. Tim Norlinger, Taylor's attorney, said he thought there were mitigating factors that the judge saw in giving him a minimum sentence, and that the parole board considered in paroling him so quickly due to his sterling record while he was in custody. Taylor's had no issues while on parole, Norlinger says. He sees a parole officer quarterly in Texas just to verify he's still working and living where he says he is. Taylor sought the commutation because his travel restrictions affect his ability to keep some jobs. Taylor works in the field of technology and has been a self-employed consultant since 2001. Taylor met DeBates, an 18-year-old Elm Creek native, in the summer of 1984 when he was 21. According to news reports, the two became friends, then lovers, before moving in together that September. The relationship ended 2 months later, but they remained roommates. Then about 3 o'clock the morning of December 21, Taylor called a friend from a restaurant downtown asking for a ride to the hospital, saying DeBetz had stabbed him in the hand with a knife. But the friend called 911 and a detective took Taylor to the hospital where he reported DeBetz stabbed him after they argued over $400 DeBetz owed him, according to reports. He said he hit DeBetz, who then left the apartment near 17th and J. But later that day, a third roommate found DeBetz's body in the trunk of his car in the parking lot. Taylor was arrested at his mother's house in Wisconsin the next day. Prosecutors charged him with first-degree murder, and he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in August 1985. At sentencing that November, Taylor told Judge Jeffrey Chabot that anger over being rejected by DeBetz led to the killing, according to newspaper accounts. Norlinger acknowledged Taylor's offense was serious and certain aspects were distasteful. He quoted from a Journal Star interview with two of the victim's sisters who said they hate what Taylor did to their brother, but don't hate Taylor and wouldn't oppose a decision to end his parole if he's shown he's a productive member of society. Certainly, Mr. Taylor is going to have to live with what he did back in 1984 for the rest of his life. We're just asking the board to consider commuting so that there's no end to this parole, Norlinger said. Probably the only way Taylor would have a chance at commutation and to get off parole in the future would be to reapply when the board's current members leave office, Norlinger said.
Two men wrongfully arrested for a double murder in Murdock, Nebraska will split a $5 million judgment, according to an order issued Wednesday by a federal judge. Nick Sampson and Matthew Livers were awarded the sum by a U.S. District Judge Joseph Battalion as a result of their lawsuits filed against the St. Paul Travelers Companies. The insurance carrier was found to cover former Douglas County Crime Lab Chief David Kofod, who was convicted of planting blood evidence against them in the slayings under the county's liability policy. Kofod served 2 years in prison for evidence tampering. Two Wisconsin teenagers later pleaded guilty to killing Wayne and Sharman Stock in 2006 and were given life sentences. In 2014, attorneys for Livers and Sampson filed garnishment claims against the insurance company for $6.6 million, the sum they were awarded in a federal civil rights case against Kofod. Livers and Sampson were jailed for months after the murder of the Stocks, who are Livers' aunt and uncle. The case involved a false confession extracted from Livers during a coercive interrogation in which Livers, who has a learning disability, implicated himself and Sampson, his cousin, in the killings. Sampson and Livers settled separately with state and county authorities for $2.6 million in 2013. That left only the claims against Kofod. In March 2014, Battalion returned a verdict against Kofod, broke, unemployed, and living in North Carolina. Kofod said he had no way of paying the judgment. So the plaintiff's attorney sought to tap the county's liability policy that was in place during the investigation. The settlement with Douglas County released the county from liability, but not its insurers, at least to the extent those insurers may be deemed responsible for payment of a judgment against Kofod. This traveler's policy has a coverage limit of $5 million. Battalion didn't award interest on the judgment, saving the defendant thousands of dollars. Within 14 days of the date of this order, will submit to the court calculations of each plaintiff's proportionate share of the garnishes of the $5 million liability, Battalion wrote. The court would then issue an order directing the payment. Attorney Bob Mullen represents Livers. We are very happy with the ruling of the court and look forward to the day we can actually collect on the judgment, Mullen said. The judge also awarded nearly $233,000 in attorney fees. St. Paul Travelers has indicated it will appeal the ruling. A spokesman for the insurance company said it had no comment on the ruling. An attorney for Sampson did not immediately return a message seeking comment.
The company that took over driving offenders from the youth jail to court last year is doing a poor job in putting both the young people and the community at risk. That's the opinion of juvenile court judges, Lancaster County Sheriff's deputies, and County Public Defender Joe Negro, who expressed their views to the county board Thursday at the request of Commissioner Roma Amundsen. They beseeched the board to have the Lancaster County Youth Services Center take the job back. The center stopped driving youth under state jurisdiction last year after the county and state were unable to come to an agreement about how much the state should be paying the county to house juveniles. The issue came to a head on the heels of a state law that prohibits young people from appearing at juvenile court hearings in shackles. State youths are those who have been adjudicated, meaning they've been found guilty or not guilty. County youths are not those whose cases have not yet progressed to that stage. The majority of the current 33 residents of the center just south of the Nebraska State Penitentiary are the state's responsibility. A year ago, the Nebraska Juvenile Probation System contracted with Midwest Special Services Incorporated of Omaha to take the young offenders to court at a cost of around $53 for a round trip. Since then, Lancaster County Sheriff's deputies have come to dread providing security for juvenile court, said Sheriff's Captain Jerry Witt, who oversees courtroom security. Dozens of times in the past year, he said deputies have had to catch youths who slipped out of handcuffs and ran or physically restrained teenagers who got bad news from a judge. I've never known anybody to escape youth services employees while they are in our building, Witt said. It never happened. And now it's happening all the time. They've had a couple of kids escape from one of their vans and run away. Current policy calls for the young offenders to be brought to the courthouse in restraints that are removed for court hearings, then put back on for the ride back to the center. Juvenile County Judge Roger Heidemann said staff from the center have professional training, have developed relationships with the young people, and know how to calm potentially violent situations. They know how to de-escalate situations that somebody who doesn't work with them day in and day out and isn't trained doesn't know how to do, he said. It's what is best for the kids. Juvenile County Judge Reggie Ryder called the transportation situation an absolute mess. Midwest Special Services doesn't always have drivers available, forcing judges to reschedule hearings or order deputies to transport, a job the sheriff's office has said it doesn't want. Rescheduling means changing the schedules of attorneys, telling families to come back another day, and leaving kids in detention longer than is necessary. Nebraska law says it's the state's responsibility to pay for transportation, said Chief Deputy Lancaster County Attorney Doug Sear. County Public Defender Joe Nigro said the county step up to shoulder the cost of transportation for the sake of the youth the court system is attempting to reform into productive citizens. I think we have to be realistic politically. The state is not going to fund this, he said.
It's time now to turn to the obituaries and funeral arrangements in our local papers from the Omaha World Herald. Antoniak, Michael J. Antoniak, age 65. There will be a complete notice later. Carisko Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. Atkinson, Dorothy Atkinson, age 90, of Valley, Nebraska. Reichmuth Funeral Home on West Maple is handling the arrangements. Bailey, Virgilia Jill Ann Bailey, age 81, of Underwood, Iowa, passed away November 23. In lieu of flowers, contributions may be made to Hospice with Heart of Council Bluffs and Glenwood, Iowa. Hoy Kilnowski Funeral Home and Crematory in Council Bluffs. Bedore, or Bedore, Alice Floral Bedore, Bedore, 91, complete notice later. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries on 72nd Street. Benton, Doris Jean Benton, age 74. Thomas Funeral Home on North 24th Street. Blom, Glenn A. Blom, age 76, that's Blohm, a veteran. Memorials to American Cancer Society, Raider Mortuary, 108th Street Chapel. Brady, Mary E. Brady. Memorials to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital or Nebraska Lung Association, Keefe Hoffman DeWart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Bruner, Diane L. Bruner, age 62, of Omaha. Brahmin Mortuary, 72nd Street Chapel. Burke, Cynthia S. Burke, age 82, of Omaha. Memorials to New Horizon Church are preferred. The New Horizon Church that's a New Horizon Presbyterian Church at 30 Valley View Drive in Council Bluffs. Cutler O'Neill Meyer Woodring Bayless Park Chapel in Council Bluffs is handling the arrangements. Corey William Bill Corey Sr., age 67. In lieu of flowers, please make memorials out to Hayden Corey, Good Shepherd Funeral Home on South 24th Street. Dorsey, Jacqueline Dorsey, age 64. Memorial contributions made to Bethel AME Church, Thomas Funeral Home on North 24th Street. Dusenberry, artist Artie Dusenberry, age 85, of Atlantic, Iowa, formerly of Humboldt and Glenwood, Iowa. Memorials may be made to the Glenwood High School Vocal Music Department, Atlantic High School Vocal Music Department, or Tarkio College Foundation. Peterson Mortuary in Glenwood, Iowa is handling the arrangements. Frick or Fricky, Charlie Fricky Sr., age 79. Heafy Hoffman, Dvork Cutler, Bel Air Chapel is handling the arrangements. Gall, Jeff P. Gall, age 55. Memorial suggested to the family or the Nebraska Humane Society, John A. Gentleman Mortuaries on 72nd Street. Graham, Olive Marie Graham, age 73. Passed away in Brownville, Texas. It says after cremation, a memorial service will be held in Omaha at a later date. There is no information concerning that, or no funeral home is posted. Hemmingson, Roberta L. Hemmingson, age 74. Memorials may be directed to the family. Heafy Hoffman Dvork Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Madalena, Frank A. Madalena, age 79. Heafy Hoffman Dvork Cutler, Vinton Street Chapel. Nigro, Joseph L. Nigro, age 79, of Omaha, a veteran, military honors by the U.S. Navy and VFW Post 2503. In lieu of flowers, memorials to the Alzheimer's Association or Josie Harper Hospice House, Brahmin Mortuary on South 144th Street. Novy, Alan S. Novy, that's N-O-V-Y, age 69, retired Master Sergeant. Thomas Funeral Home on North 24th Street is handling the arrangements. Oxner, Edward H. Oxner, age 86. There will be a complete notice later. Heafy Hoffman Dvork Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Peterson, Marjorie Ann Peterson, maiden name Hanson, age 89, of Minden, Nebraska. Memorials to Alzheimer's Association and Beautiful Savior Lutheran Church. That is in La Vista, Nebraska. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries on Pacific Street is handling the arrangements. Platter, Kathleen S. K. Platter, age 78. Memorials to Creighton Prep or Millard Public Schools Foundation, Heafy Hoffman Dvork Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Polyasco, Alexander Cartel Polyasco, that's Polyascko, age 27, of Council Bluffs. There will be no services. Mar Livingston Funeral and Cremation Services on 7th Street in Council Bluffs. This one's Rastede or Rastede, Jeffrey A. Rastede, R-A-S-T-E-D-E, age 48, of Council Bluffs, a veteran. Memorials may be directed to the family. I think he was a veteran of the Navy. Hoy Kilnoski Funeral Home and Crematory on 16th Street in Council Bluffs. Rebeloso, Nicholas John Rebeloso, age 23, complete notice later, John A. Gentleman Mortuaries on Pacific Street. Sister M. Catherine Rupp, Omaha Servants of Mary. Memorials to the Servants of Mary. Heafy Hoffman Dvork Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Stokinger, Bonnie J. Stokinger, that's S-T-O-E-C-K-I-N-G-E-R, age 92. Memorials will be directed to the family. Heafy Hoffman Dvork Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Trotter, Maxine Trotter, age 58. No viewing, no services. Kremer Funeral Home on West Maple. Watson, Chester T. Watson, age 53, no services, Good Shepherd Funeral Home on South 24th Street. And my final listing is Wilt, Anna G. Wilt, age 85, memorials to Trinity Lutheran Church in Papillion, or Josie Harper Hospice House, Crosby, Burkett, Swanson, Golden on West Center Road.
And these are obituaries in the Lincoln Journal-Star for Friday, December 2. Aiden, Patrick J. Aiden, was 45 and lived in Lincoln. Memorials, care of the family, Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. Barrett, Betty Barrett, was 86 and lived in Ridgeland, Mississippi. The Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home is handling services. Christopher, Florinda Louise Christopher, was 96 and lived in Lincoln. Memorials to Christ Lutheran Church or AseraCare Hospice, the Roper and Sons Funeral Home. Danskin, Sandy L. Danskin, was 73 and lived in Exeter. The Laubermore Funeral Home in Friend is handling services. Memorials to Heritage Crossings Nursing Home in Geneva or AseraCare Hospice. Fessler, Nancy I. Logan Fessler, was 66 and lived in Cologne. The Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home is handling services. Gotchula, Virginia Gotchula, was 89 when she died in Pawnee City on December 1. Grote, Robert or Robbie Grote, was 82 and lived in Shickley. He was a veteran. The Farmer and Son Funeral Home in Geneva. Memorials may be directed to St. Mary's Catholic Church or the Shickley American Legion. Holm, Donald A. Holm, was 83 and lived in Lincoln. Memorial service will be 11 a.m. Monday, December 5 at First Lutheran Church in Lincoln. Jernigan, Lonnie Bill Jernigan, was 64 and lived in Lincoln. His wishes were cremation with no service. The Wyuka Funeral Home handled arrangements. Madsen, Sawyer Bell Madsen, was 21 months of age. A memorial service is scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at 3000 Old Cheney Road. Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home is handling arrangements. Memorials may be directed to the Sawyer Bell, in Sawyer Bell's memory, on behalf of GiveTaxFree.org campaigns Sawyer Bell Madsen. Ray F. Ma, was 87 and lived in Lincoln. The Metcalf Funeral Service is handling arrangements. McLaughlin, Kathleen M. McLaughlin, was 81 and lived in Lincoln. The Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home is handling arrangements. Muff, Eugene or Gene C. Muff Sr., was 75 and died on November 29. The Laubermore Funeral Home in Friend. Phelps, Vernon Otis Phelps, was 78. He was a veteran and served in the Nebraska or the North Dakota Air Guard. Celebration of Life will be 1 p.m. on Monday, December 5 at Community Church of Christ in Lincoln. Pretzer, Irene Edna Pretzer, I don't have an age. She died in Diller on November 30. Riken, Dora Riken, was 96 when she died in Tecumseh on December 1. Renemans, Ivers L. Renemans, died on November 25. Celebration of Life will be 2 to 5 p.m. on December 17 at the Lincoln Firefighters Hall in Lincoln. Schlegel, DeVern or D. Schlegel, was 80 when death occurred on November 23. The Aspen Aftercare Service is handling arrangements. Schmidt, Maynard K. Schmidt, was 77 and lived in North Platte. The Carpenter Memorial Carpenter Memorial Chapel in North Platte is handling arrangements. Memorials to the Game and Parks Fishing in Nebraska Schools. And my final notice is for Thompson, Betty Jean Thompson. She was 88 and lived in Fairmont. She died on November 29. Memorials to the Fairmont Community Church, the Farmer and Son Funeral Home in Geneva.
Listeners, memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska 68152. And thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter. And Ralph and I will be right back after a short break with editorials, today's living and entertainment, business and markets, and sports.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Gunning and Ralph Morocco. Thank you for being the first hour from today's newspaper. We will, as Bob just indicated, be back after a short break. And the first thing we'd like to do now is to present the
So Thursday, I took our car to get the recall done on the airbags on our Honda. And when we went to pick up the car, there was a mom, a Latino mom and her little boy, and picking up their car ahead of me in line. So I got talking to the little boy, and I went, "Are you all ready for Christmas?" And he goes, and I said, "What'd you ask for?" And he goes, "I don't remember." And I said, "Well, what's your favorite thing?" He goes, "Race cars." And I looked at Mom and I go, "Really?" And she says, "He will sit and watch NASCAR for hours, just sit there and watch, and she loves it." And I said, "Well, how old are you?" And he goes, 4. And he says, "And I'll be 5 in 2 months." He was just a hoot. He was a very smart little kid.
Isn't that neat?
That'd be I don't remember.
It's a very popular program called Saturday Night Movies. Here is him to tell us about this week's movie presentation.
Funny how, our son wanted a mixer, KitchenAid mixer. That's his Christmas list. But they're good
and they'll last his lifetime.
Yeah, but him and his girlfriend now living together, it's like
Need some of those household
different sort of gifts. And our daughter wanted a sewing machine.
Isn't that interesting?
Okay.
National Velvet is a classic, and it stars Mickey Rooney and Liz Taylor, a very young Mickey Rooney and an extremely young Liz Taylor. I think she was 14 when she first started this movie. Okay, in honor of the passing of Mickey
Well, with the multitude of billionaires that Trump's putting on his cabinet, we'll get a chance to see if business people really what they can do, I told Janelle, I said, the crazy part about this is it might be better for us in our portfolio from a financial perspective, since we'll really suck from a social perspective. But from a financial perspective, it might benefit us a little bit. It goes contrary to everything we believe in. But.
Yeah.
Now, let's return to our readers for the second hour reading from today's Omaha World Herald and the Here once again are our stars. Back to Bob Godding and Ralph Morocco.
Thank you, Paul, and welcome back, listeners. We'll start the second half with an opinion article in the Omaha World Herald entitled "Death Penalty, Give Input on Protocol." Nebraska voters have spoken definitively in favor of the death penalty. Now the state needs a way to carry it out. The last Nebraska execution was in 1997, when Robert Williams was electrocuted. The state hasn't attempted an execution in the 7 years since the method was switched to lethal injection. Public opposition to capital punishment has been increasing both nationwide and in Nebraska, and lawsuits filed against manufacturers of the drugs used to carry out the death penalty have made it harder for states to procure them. Many American and European manufacturers no longer sell the drugs to states for use in carrying out the death penalty by lethal injection. Nebraska has spent thousands of dollars to buy drugs internationally, yet failed to import them. Some death penalty states have been able to obtain the needed drugs by passing laws or adopting procedures shielding the manufacturer's names. The names are public under the 2009 Nebraska law that changed the state's method of execution to lethal injection. Governor Pete Ricketts, saying he respects the will of the voters, backs an administrative change in the death penalty protocol. Ricketts and the Nebraska Department of Correctional Services propose adding a pharmacist or pharmaceutical chemist to the state's execution team. Prison officials say doing so would help the state obtain the drugs to carry out a death sentence, since the identities of execution team members are kept confidential under the 2009 state law. Prison officials say death row inmates would be notified about the specific drugs to be used 60 days before a scheduled execution, and say that should provide time for appeals. Advocates for open government and critics of Nebraska's death penalty question the need to shield the manufacturer's identity. Some state senators have discussed clarifying the intent of the 2009 law. It's up to the legislature to decide whether to accept the governor's proposal through legislation that would codify it or reject it. For now, the public is left to weigh the Corrections Department proposal. The administration has scheduled a public hearing for December 30 on its policy change. Nebraskans should take the opportunity to offer comments on the new protocol. State leaders should receive as much feedback as possible on the protocol for an issue as difficult and divisive as the death penalty. Death penalty politics in Nebraska are complex. The legislature repealed the death penalty. Then the governor led and helped finance a successful effort to restore it. He also campaigned against senators running for re-election who voted to repeal the death penalty or allowed the repeal to advance. Given the state's difficulties in procuring execution drugs, officials may need to pursue some sort of protection for the drug manufacturers, whether in policy or in law. This discussion pits two important principles against one another: complying with the public's expressed will versus government transparency. Let the debate begin.
And these are letters to the editor appearing in the Journal Star. June Simpson of Lincoln writes, "Stupidity should hurt, says my son. For the white women and men who voted for Donald Trump, it is going to hurt all of us. Get in line for the grab, not of your private parts unless you're white, female, and a 10. No, Donald Trump will grab your health care, Social Security, your constitutional right to protest, and your economic future. People voted for a greedy, very rich, egotistical, psychopathic shyster salesman. We're just at the launch of a devastating ride, and now Republican leaders who decried his attention-getting antics of hate and division are kissing up to him for a job. My 98-year-old mother survived the Hoovervilles of the Great Depression and the home-stealing antics of George W. Bush's Great Recession. She, with her fourth-grade education, would say to those who voted for Trump and those of us who were ashamed of them, Katie, bar the door." Annie Mason of Lincoln writes, "I'm truly outraged by the way our government is handling the Standing Rock pipeline situation. Why does the government seem to be backing the million-dollar company and not its own people? This is causing more harm than good, and it needs to be put to a stop immediately. The pipeline is risky, not necessary, and in general, not the right thing to do. The pipeline would risk water contamination and overall people's health. The pipe is at risk to rupture, which leaves them with oil in the water. Oil in the water means no water at all. The pipeline is not something that needs to be done. People are getting physically hurt by our own government protecting water, which, by the way, is necessary for life. This pipeline, on the other hand, is not necessary for our existence. The pipe can move, but the water source cannot. Not only is it risking the health of our own people, but it is destroying Native American burial sites and other culturally significant artifacts. It's simply wrong to disrespect another culture's ancestors' beliefs and history to make an already rich company richer. The situation at Standing Rock is delicate, unnecessary, and wrong. I'm disgusted the way things are turning out, and it needs to end now. Our people have rights, and they're being violated. Why are the protesters being intimidated by its own government to move? The same government that is supposed to be protecting them in situations like this. And there is a cartoon in the Lincoln Journal Star, and it is Donald Trump speaking to just a crowd of people, but only two individuals are obvious, an obvious woman and man, and they're smiling as he says, "I promise that I will never cut Social Security or Medicare." And obviously they're very happy. In the next scene, he's pointing at a gentleman who looks like some version of Edward Scissorhands, labeled Paul Ryan, but he's got all kinds of scissors and axes and saws and razor blades and everything else that cuts things in his hands. And Trump points at him and says, "He will." And obviously the two people in the picture do not look happy.
From the Omaha Public Pulse, a letter from Sharon Bennett of Grand Island, Nebraska writes, "A few months ago, my grandson and two friends were killed in a motor vehicle accident in the Omaha area. They were missing for several days before the vehicle was found. As soon as we realized they were missing, we began searching for them. We knew they all had cell phones with them, and in this day of wonderful technology, we knew it was possible for their phones to be pinged to determine their location. We asked several phone companies and law enforcement agencies to do this, but no one was willing or able to help us out. Everyone we asked said they didn't have the authority to do this. So we waited and searched for 3 days. But the thing that haunts us so much is that it is very possible one or two of these young people might be alive today if they had been found sooner, if only their phones had been pinged. I hope this letter will stimulate some thought about how the next such occasion could generate a better outcome." Frank Kokotajol, I think that's how you pronounce that, of Papillion writes, "Nancy A. Hill's November 29 Public Pulse letter, 'Parents need a refresher on respect,' is absolutely correct. I think parents also need a refresher on discipline. At home, many parents are afraid to say no to their kids. They don't want to hurt their self-esteem. They also allow them to talk back and do what they want whenever they want. They do not apply consequences that fit the misbehavior in order to inhibit that misbehavior. Then they send their children to school. What do you expect? The children will behave the same way in school." Jim Betchel of Omaha writes, "Thank you for the November 29 editorial, A Fire Hose of Falsehood, and for stressing the importance of critical reasoning to see through propaganda. For years, disinformation campaigns have been part of the toolkit of intelligence agencies for influencing other nations' elections. In 1949, in the face of growing American influence in post-war Europe, Soviet Premier Vyacheslav Molotov announced the formation of the Communist Information Bureau, aimed at disseminating pro-Russian propaganda. In the previous year, the newly created CIA, in its first operation, worked very hard at subverting elections in Italy to see our chosen party, the Christian Democrats, victorious. The U.S. even went so far as to bump off or help overthrow democratically elected leaders such as Salvador Allende in Chile, Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran, and Jacob Arbenz in Guatemala, and others. So Russian dictator Vladimir Putin can smirk and say, "What goes around comes around." It's our turn to be on the receiving end now, and it's scary. Jim Lane of Omaha writes, "I have an idea for the development of the Omaha riverfront. I propose that a national monument of the magnitude of the Statue of Liberty or the St. Louis Arch or Mount Rushmore be erected on our riverfront. I propose that this monument be called the Statue of Responsibility. It would complement the Statue of Liberty as a national or universal symbol. The idea being that liberty is nothing without responsibility, and responsibility is nothing without liberty. Our state and city would be a very appropriate location for this symbol because of our history of responsible political and economic behavior. The statue should be the same height as the Statue of Liberty. What should the statue look like? I propose that it be a very large reproduction of Boys Town, He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother statue. It's a symbol that originates with Omaha. I hope people do not think this is a windmill chasing cockamamie idea. And Willakamek of DeWitt, Nebraska writes, Richard Zirk is promoting a splendid idea to fallen Nebraska soldiers. As a University of Nebraska student in the 1950s, I watched football along with 30,000 plus fans. The millions spent on the stadium since then should signify that there would be a few $100,000 that people, including those who chose to kneel, would be willing to donate to honor the fallen men and women of Nebraska. I hope Chancellor Ronnie Green and the University of Nebraska Board of Regents find a way to accomplish Zirk's idea.
This is the Our View column written by the editorial board of the Lincoln Journal-Star. About 6 out of every 10 Nebraskans who voted in November wanted state government to continue to try to implement the death penalty. So it's no surprise that Governor Pete Ricketts has taken a step toward that end. It's disappointing that the administration wants to make some parts of the execution process secret. The Journal-Star editorial board, we should quickly acknowledge, was among the 4 in 10 Nebraskans and the majority of Lancaster County voters who favored replacing the death penalty with a sentence of life in prison. We continue to think it's a sad day for justice in Nebraska that the death penalty is back on the books, despite the irrefutable evidence that innocent people sometimes are put on death row and that the death penalty is applied arbitrarily. The question, however, is how the death penalty will be implemented now that voters have spoken. The state of Nebraska has never executed a person using lethal injection. The last person executed here in 1997 died in the electric chair, which was ruled cruel and unusual punishment by the Nebraska Supreme Court. The previous lethal injection protocol, which subsequently was ruled to be unworkable. One of the 3 drugs it specified, sodium thiopental, can no longer be purchased for executions in the United States. Now the Ricketts administration is trying to devise a new system. There's no quick fix for the process. A drug now commonly used for executions is pentobarbital. But the only injectable form of the drug licensed for sale in the United States is Nembutal, which Danish firm Lundbeck, which refuses to sell it to prisons. The firm said in a statement in 2011 that it adamantly opposes the distressing misuse of our product in capital punishment. States like Texas use pentobarbital made in a compounding pharmacy. The proposed new protocol would keep secret the source of the execution drugs, although Attorney General Doug Peterson has pointed out that it could be supplied internally by state government, which has pharmacists on its payroll. The execution drug and a chemical analysis would be made public 60 days prior to an execution, according to the protocol that will be subject to a public hearing on December 30 from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the state office building. The ACLU of Nebraska has already promised to fight in court the Ricketts administration to keep part of the execution process secret from the public. Regardless of how people feel about the death penalty, we should all agree that Nebraskans value government transparency and accountability in all matters, said Executive Director Danielle Conrad.
It's time now to turn to the lighter sections of our papers with today's Living and Entertainment. And of course, it's the time of year where there's lots of Christmas types of celebrations and concerts going on. And this one is about the 10 Tenors. At this time of year, any concert titled Home for the Holidays will bring to mind much loved tunes that tie together all our good feelings from years past and hopes for a brighter tomorrow. What that title does not evoke is the 10 Aussie tenors that burst upon the Holland Center stage Thursday night with a blend of Christmas classics and other tunes in stunning rock, pop, and operatic style arrangements. Put Pavarotti, Domingo, and Carreras into Christmas past. Since the first concert of that famous 3 in 1990, Classical crossovers have evolved, and these 10 Australians know how to push the boundaries of popera. In addition to the classically trained talents turning to pop, the group now includes rock, jazz, and musical theater voices in 10-part arrangements that combine to bring the best out of every piece. The concert showcased voices of sublime sweetness, screaming rock sounds, and full-throated operatic roars. Somehow, it was a perfect balance. Considering how used we are to the loudness in live music, from the opening notes, the sound was surprisingly restrained. This had the effect of allowing the listener to pick up individual voices and instruments, a three-piece stage band, a piano, guitar, and drums. It worked wonderfully with the superb acoustics of the Holland Center, opening the first half with two traditional pieces, Joy to the World and Adeste Fidelis. The 10 tenors offered glimpses of the complex textures that would run through most of the evening's songs. The mood abruptly changed as the guys then finger-snapped their way through a swinging winter wonderland and moved right on to one of the highlights of the evening, a Jersey Boys medley that drew vigorous applause from the mostly 60-thumb audience. In the perky sleigh ride, complete with fake snow that followed, one of the 10 tenors brought a young woman from the audience on stage, and the entire group gathered round to sing to her. Perched on a stool, she confidently threw one leg over the other and moved her head in perfect time with the group as though it was all part of the plan. An astute observer noted that the young woman was actually local theater veteran and songbird Leanne Hill Carlson, who just happened to be in the front row of the audience. The first half of the concert finished with the Best of the Divas medley that brought down the house. The second half opened with a militaristic and brooding Little Drummer Boy and continued with other Christmas hits, including an a cappella doo-wop version of All I Want for Christmas Is You, a beautifully crafted arrangement of White Christmas and Oh Holy Night, which featured the full range of voices. Musical talents aside, the handsome young man had charm to spare. Elegantly clad in black tuxedos with carefully crafted hair, they sang, danced, and bantered between songs, joking about how hot it is in Australia at Christmas time and how much some of them look forward to their first white Christmas. The standout piece of the night was an electrifying version of Queen's Somebody to Love, featuring the astonishing vocal range of J.D. Smith. In true holiday spirit, the 10 tenors are donating a portion of the proceeds from their recent album, Our Christmas Wish, to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
And this is the Ask Amy column written by Amy Dickinson and appearing in the Journal Star. Dear Amy, my wife and I have been married for almost 10 years. We're in our mid-30s. We don't have children. We have hit a brick wall. She says that she completely resents me for not going to family functions and doing couples activities. I will try harder to do more of these things. She has said that she has changed and that we've grown apart. She's taken up different activities outside the home. She's taken dancing lessons and is working out at the local gym every day. She is out every other night, sometimes until quite late. We don't eat dinner together anymore, and I've had many sleepless nights worrying about our relationship. I'm extremely concerned and worried about our marriage. When she's home, she's complacent and withdrawn and constantly on her cell phone receiving text messages from her new friends. This is slowly driving me insane. There is a terrible tension between us, and she fails to see what this is doing to our relationship. I miss my wife so much. I've told her this, and she says she is going to try to spend more time with me, but nothing changes. I'm extremely confused and scared about our future. I've told her she's breaking my heart. We just seem to be going in circles. What do you suggest? Signed, Heartbroken. Dear Heartbroken, your marriage is at a breaking point, and it could be at a point of no return unless you and your wife decide to try to fix it together. All of her actions indicate she's no longer invested in your relationship, and some of her actions, the working out and constant texting, point to the possibility she's having an affair. Your marriage didn't wither on its own. Your own behavior contributed to your problems. Unfortunately, you also cannot fix it on your own. You and your wife can repair your marriage together through hard work and tender caretaking. A marriage counselor would help to clarify the next steps to take and would also help you to weather a possible breakup. Also read The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, a practical guide from the country's foremost relationship expert by John Gottman and Nan Silber. This groundbreaking relationship book studies successful couples, offering helpful tools to get and stay together. Dear Amy, I'm in high school. A kid at my school got an award last year for perfect attendance. The local newspaper ran an article about it, mentioning that he was never even late for one class. The newspaper said that his mother got stopped by the police 8 or 9 times and still got him there on time. What the paper didn't say is that his father is a police captain. My parents only let me drive because I agreed that I would never speed, and I never have, even though I've been called a nerd. I may not be an adult, but I think there is more than one thing wrong with this perfect attendance situation, and the newspaper article making that kid's mom look like a hero for speeding. What do you think? Signed, Student. Dear student, I agree with you that nobody should celebrate speeding, especially in connection with high school students. You have never been stopped by the police. Good for you. But one thing you should know is that a traffic stop is time-consuming. If you're speeding to avoid being late, a visit by the highway patrol, even a quick one, will eat up precious time. If this mom got stopped and still got her child to school on time, then she probably left the house early enough to get Mr. Perfect attendance there without speeding.
In People News, from Independence, Ohio, LeBron James delivered on a promise and ended decades of Cleveland sports misery in 2016 for leading the Cavaliers to an NBA title and ending the city's 52-year title drought. James was chosen as Sports Illustrated Sports Person of the Year on Thursday, joining Tiger Woods as the award's only 2-time winners since its inception in 1954. Mariah Carey is set to ring in 2017 with a live performance in Times Square as the headliner for Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve with Ryan Seacrest on ABC. The show's producers say Carey will take the Midtown Manhattan stage moments before the ball drops to mark the new year. Also on the musical lineup, rock, pop, dance, DNCE, country star Thomas Rhett, Gloria Estefan, and the cast of her Broadway musical On Your Feet. From New York, Drake owned the year on Spotify. He's the most streamed act on the platform with 4.7 billion streams. The rapper has the most streamed album and song views with 2.45 billion and One Dance with 970 million on Spotify this year. It was announced late Wednesday. The top albums following views are Justin Bieber's Purpose, Rihanna's Anti, 21 Pilots, Blurry Faced, and The Weeknd's Beauty Behind Madness. Selena Gomez rules Instagram. The photo sharing site released its year-end data Thursday, showing that the 24-year-old pop star has the most followers of any celebrity, 103 million, and was responsible for nearly all the most liked celebrity posts in 2016. Gomez beat out Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Kylie Jenner, and Kendall Jenner followers to top the site's list of most popular celebrities. And finally, from Bridgetown, Barbados, Britain's Prince Harry joined Rihanna in celebrating 50 years of independence for her native Barbados. The prince visited the 6th of 7 nations on a 2-week Caribbean tour, and the singer shared the stage Wednesday night with the Prime Minister during a concert and dance performance, marking the date the island broke away from Britain. Harry read a message from Queen Elizabeth II congratulating Barbados and saying that the island should be rightfully proud of a vibrant culture and natural beauty.
And this is John Roseman's parenting column from the Journal Star. Some of the sources that inform today's parenting do not come immediately to mind when one thinks of raising children. Take Karl Marx, for example. Along with his buddy Friedrich Engels, Marx articulated the fundamental principles of communism. He proposed that capitalism was an economic and social system that exploited and oppressed labor and kept the masses in a perpetual state of subjugation and misery. Marx was the unspoken godfather of the late 1960s, early 1970s psychological parenting revolution. The revolutionaries, mental health professionals mostly, profess that traditional parenting oppresses the natural, also known as inner child. This myth gave rise to a relationship-based, feeling-based, self-esteem-based parenting and child rearing in America that has been on the skids ever since. Today, the typical American parent practices, and to be fair, unwittingly, what I call egalitarian parenting, also known as postmodern psychological parenting. The parents in question lack confidence in the legitimacy of their authority and behave, therefore, as if the parent-child relationship is constituted of equals. The general result is children who are flush with esteem for their bad selves, but deficient in respect for their elders. 50 years ago, such children were called, among other things, insufferable. Because egalitarian parenting syndrome is a form of codependency, its practitioners are usually clueless. Therefore, I have devised the following short questionnaire to help them self-identify or not. The directions are simple. Answer each statement with either mostly true, somewhat true, or not true. Then assign yourself 10 points for every mostly true, 5 points for every somewhat true. 1. When I talk to my child, I try to get down to his or her level, or did when he or she was smaller. 2. I generally end instructions with okay. 3. My child sleeps with me or us. 4. When my child throws a fit over a decision I made, I often feel that his or her reaction means that I may have made the wrong decision. 5. I always want to be pleasing to my child. 6. If my child agrees to do a household chore, I usually pay him or her for doing so because adults get paid for doing work. 7. I give my child lots of choices, like where he wants to sit when our family goes to a restaurant, what he would like for supper, where he wants the family to go on vacation. 8. I generally explain to my child the reasons behind my decisions and instructions. 9. I allow my child to call adults by their first names. 10. I often get into arguments with my child. If you score 60 or above, you're suffering from egalitarian parenting syndrome. The good news is you can recover. Here's a great first step in that direction. The next time you need some parenting advice, ask your grandmother or some other person over age 65.
In Heloise Household Hints, dear readers, with the internet becoming our go-to source for education, solutions, ideas, hints, etc., consider educating yourself on some of the most common fraud schemes you can fall victim to. I did this and it was very informative, so much so that there was even a scheme listed that I wouldn't have categorized as such. In the search box, type in common fraud schemes, then click the link www.fbi.gov. There you'll have choices of scams to peruse and educate yourself on. Don't be an uninformed victim. These schemers are just waiting in to pounce on the innocent or ill-informed. Dear readers, here are some hints to consider when booking safer rooms in hotels. Choose hotels where the crime rate is low. Book rooms on the first or second floor. Go no higher than the fifth floor in case of an emergency in which you have to use the stairs or need to exit through a window. Try to stay away from rooms that have interlocking doors and make sure your room has a deadbolt end and eye hole. Choose hotels where the front desk is manned 24 hours a day and security is present. Make sure an evacuation plan is posted in your room. Book rooms not easily accessible from the street and away from public areas like restaurants. I'm sure you can think of your own ideas for booking safer rooms in hotels, but these should help you start thinking along those lines. Dear Heloise, as a new apartment renter, can you give me some ways to use baking soda? I'm on a tight budget. I've been told that baking soda has many uses. If I can save money by stocking this powder instead of multiple cleaners, deodorizers, sanitizers, etc., this should have a positive effect on my monthly budget. Signed, Philip A. in Austin, Texas. Heloise responds, Philip, baking soda can be used to eliminate odors, refresh or soothe the body, act as a fabric softener in the dryer, treat laundry stains as a toothpaste, treat laundry stains or as a toothpaste. It also is used in many baking and cooking recipes. Baking soda is so versatile that if you use it regularly, you will save yourself a ton of money by purchasing this amazing powder instead of multiple liquids and cleaners for your apartment needs. And finally, dear readers, put rakes, hose, shovels, etc. in a large garbage can with wheels. Hang smaller tools on S-hooks around the rim of the can. Then you can roll all your tools around as you work.
And let's turn to business pages. And I think it is, see, as we look at stock markets yesterday, it was kind of a mixed day. The Dow was up pretty nicely, 68.35 points at 19,191.93, showing a 10.14% year-to-date gain. But NASDAQ was off 72.57. It's up only 4.87% year-to-date. And the S&P 500 was also down, off 7.73 points at 2,191.08. It's showing a 7.2% gain year-to-date. Light sweet crude for January delivery rose $1.62. That's on top of about an 8% jump the day before, so gasoline prices definitely headed higher. From Omaha, a monthly survey of business supply managers shows improvement, but still reflects relatively weak economic conditions in 9 Midwest and Plain states, according to a report issued Thursday. The Mid-America Business Conditions Index report said the overall economic index for the region rose to 46.5 in November from 43.8 in October. Weakness among manufacturers linked to agriculture, energy, and international markets continue to weigh on regional economic conditions, said Creighton University economist Ernie Goss, who oversees the survey. Despite the decline in manufacturing, the non-manufacturing sector of the regional economy is expanding, albeit at a slow pace, he said. The survey results are compiled into a collection of indexes ranging from 0 to 100. Survey organizers say any score above 50 suggests growth in that factor. A score below that suggests decline. The survey covers Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, and South Dakota. Nebraska's index rose to 45, up from 43.3 in October. The region's manufacturing sector continued to lose jobs as the job index for November declined to 41.9 last month from October's 44.4. The growth gap between regional manufacturing and non-manufacturing remains wide, Goss said, pointing to U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data that say the region's manufacturing sector lost more than 16,000 jobs, a 1.2% decline, while regional non-manufacturing added almost 102,000 jobs, an increase of a subpar 0.8%. The supply managers survey indicated they expect their businesses to increase wages next year by 2.7% over 2016 levels.
Omaha is one of 20 cities selected to join a national initiative to boost hiring in tech fields, especially for people traditionally underrepresented in those jobs. The designation demonstrates that Omaha has the partners, employers, and training opportunities in place, along with support from city leadership to expand tech job opportunities, according to the program called the Tech Hire Initiative. The program doesn't necessarily come with grant money or new training opportunities, though those are possibilities, but access to the network will help existing Omaha organizations already working to fill open tech jobs to collaborate and learn from other communities nationwide, said Shauna Dorsey, Managing Director of Omaha's Interface Web School. Under the initiative, Interface will work in collaboration with the AIM Institute, Omaha Code School, and the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce, along with interested local businesses. Employers participating in the Omaha effort include Valmont Industries, Union Pacific, Flywheel, and CSG. We've been approaching it from different angles, but we all care about this collectively, Dorsey said. Chamber Chief Executive David Brown said those groups are working to increase the local information technology workforce by 4,000 employees. Together, the Greater Omaha Tech Hire Initiative will work to match employer needs with job seekers and relevant training so people can enter tech careers. Omaha is not only Nebraska jurisdiction. Omaha is not the only Nebraska jurisdiction to participate. Kearney and Buffalo County joined the program in 2015 in an earlier wave. There are now a total of 71 communities in the network. Tech Hire is a program of opportunity work, a Washington, D.C. nonprofit.
The Nebraska Attorney General's office has accused a Lincoln-based clothing business of ripping off both customers and sales agents. According to a complaint filed this week in Lancaster County District Court, Pixie Chicks and its owner, Andrea Christensen, have taken money from both customers and sales consultants and then failed to fulfill their orders. The business also was accused of selling college and pro team apparel without licenses to do so. The Attorney General's office says in its complaint that it has received at least 140 complaints from customers and sales consultants, but a spokeswoman for the office said several dozen more complaints have been received in the past 2 days. Christensen, who also operated the business under the name Stateware 51, is accused of violating both the Nebraska Consumer Protection Act and the Uniform Deceptive Trade Practices Act, as well as the Seller Assisted Marketing Plan Act. If found guilty, she could face fines of $2,000 for each violation. Customers and sales agents of the business have been complaining for months on social media, alleging they paid for custom-made merchandise and then never received it, received only part of it, or received their items months after they were promised. There have also been complaints of merchandise being of much poorer quality than what was promised. The Better Business Bureau has registered nearly 90 complaints against the business just in the past year. Earlier this month, Christensen was ordered to pay more than $11,000 to a supplier after failing to appear to contest a lawsuit against her. Those wishing to file complaints with the Attorney General's office can call 402-471-2682. Christensen could not be reached for comment. A phone number listed for both Pixie Chicks and State 51 has been disconnected.
In business briefs, long-term U.S. mortgage rates marked a fifth week of surges in the aftermath of Donald Trump's election win, reaching their highest levels this year. Mortgage giant Freddie Mac said Thursday that the average rate on a 30-year fixed loan was 4.08%, up from 4.03% the previous week. The rate on 15-year home loans, a popular choice for people who are refinancing, jumped to 3.34% from 3.25%. American factories expanded for the third straight month in November, another good sign for the American economy. The Institute for Supply Management said Thursday that its manufacturing index came in at 53.2 last month, up from 51.9 in October, and the highest figure since June. Anything over 50 signals growth. Giving Tuesday, aimed at encouraging online charitable giving, produced record donations this week. Organizations that track the flow of gifts said. The 92nd Street Y in New York City, credited for launching the event in 2012, said contributions reported by organizations for a 24-hour period totaled $168 million, up from about $117 million in 2015. U.S. builders boosted spending on construction projects by a modest 0.5% in October. The Commerce Department reported Thursday the gain following no change in September was helped by big gains in spending on home construction and government projects. From Detroit, Black Friday deals and post-election confidence helped pull November U.S. auto sales out of their recent slump and increase the chances that 2016 could set a record for new vehicle sales. Total U.S. sales rose 4% for the month to 1.38 million units. That makes it the highest November on record, beating the previous record of 1.32 million set in 2001, according to Kelley Blue Book. From Austin, Texas, the Obama administration says it will challenge a federal court's decision to block implementation of a regulation that would make an estimated 4 million people eligible for overtime pay. The U.S. Labor Department filed a notice of appeal Thursday, the same day the administration's rule had been set to take effect nationwide. 21 states, including Nebraska and Iowa, sued to block the rule, arguing it would unduly burden the public and private sectors. Last week, a federal judge in Texas issued an injunction suspending it to allow for further scrutiny. From New York, Wells Fargo said it will split the jobs of chairman and CEO and will make other major changes to the composition of its board of directors in an effort to make the bank more accountable following a scandal over its sales practices. The bank said Thursday it was amending its corporate bylaws to require that separate people fill the job of chairman and the job of CEO. The chairman and vice chairman will be independent directors, the bank said. And from New York, Starbucks chairman Howard Schultz is stepping down as CEO of the coffee chain he joined more than 30 years ago and transformed into a global brand. Schultz will become executive chairman in April to focus on innovation and social impact activities, the Seattle-based chain announced Thursday. Kevin Johnson, who was named president and chief operating officer last year, will be chief executive as of April 3. Schultz, 63, is credited with turning around Starbucks' fortunes. Since returning as its CEO in 2008, he has overseen the expansion of the chain's food and beverage offerings and the growth of its popular loyalty program and mobile app.
And we'll turn now to the sports pages from Minneapolis. Des Bryant caught 4 passes for 84 yards and the go-ahead touchdown in the fourth quarter, helping the Dallas Cowboys win their 11th straight game with a 17-15 victory over the Minneapolis Vikings on Thursday night. Bryant's 56-yard catch in the first half set up Ezekiel Elliott's 1-yard plunge. The receiver caught an 8-yard scoring pass in the fourth quarter after a fumbled punt by Minnesota's Adam Thielen. Elliott rushed for 86 yards on 20 carries for the Cowboys, now 11-1. They have the longest single-season winning streak in franchise history. Sam Bradford threw a 3-yard touchdown pass to Jerick McKinnon with 25 seconds to play, but the 2-point conversion pass failed. Bradford argued for a penalty after he was hit in the face by a defender, but there was no call for the Vikings, now 6-6. Minnesota played without coach Mike Zimmer after he had emergency eye surgery Wednesday night. Dak Prescott was 12 for 18 for 139 yards passing for Dallas. Bradford completed 32 of 45 passes for 247 yards. Danielle Hunter had 2 sacks and Kai Forbath kicked 3 field goals for Minnesota, which has lost the last 6 of 7 games after a 5-0 start.
In volleyball, the NCAA tournament is getting underway, and Creighton did win in a 5-set match against Northern Iowa. So they are still in the hunt, but of course the news is Nebraska University at Lincoln volleyball. You could see it start in the dulling details of the game in which the Nebraska volleyball team usually hones to a sharp advantage. The Huskers' serving became a little erratic. What had been pinpoint passing had become an adventure. NU would race to a lead only to see opponents climb back with strings of points. Nebraska captured the Big Ten championship, but the Huskers survived as much as they thrived at the close of the regular season. It feels like a new season, Coach John Cook said. For us, I feel like we survived the Big Ten. We accomplished that goal. That was weighing very heavily on our whole program, our team trying to get that done. On the eve of top-seeded Nebraska's NCAA tournament opener against New Hampshire, the Huskers said they were content to set aside the grueling chase of the Big Ten season and focus on a new challenge. The 4-match sprint to the Final Four, followed by 2 more victories to win a second straight national championship. The Huskers say there's no time over the next 3 weeks to think about the big picture. It's time to dial back in the details. I think, especially this year, the Big Ten was kind of exhausting, playing great teams every single weekend, setter Kelly Hunter said. I think we kind of needed to reset. In the tournament, obviously, if you don't give it your best, you're going to go home. Said senior middle blocker Amber Rolfson, it's almost like we know we're good. We know if we play well, we can make it really far. We could even win the NCAA title again. But I don't think there's a whole bunch of we have to win, we need to win, because that's just going to make you play really tense and really uptight. Loose and fun is how these Huskers flourish. It was a formula Nebraska found during last year's run to the NCAA title. And to Cook, it's a sure sign when he sees smiles in practice. We saw them come back this week as Nebraska prepared for its 5th straight opening round opponent from the East Coast. New Hampshire brings a 10-match winning streak to Lincoln after winning the American East Tournament for the 4th year in a row. The Wildcats have been swept by Florida, Washington, and USC in the first round the previous 3 seasons, and have been swept in their first round in 5 of their 6 NCAA appearances. Cook, always eager to illustrate his points with a metaphor, compared winning the Big Ten title to climbing a mountain. The Huskers grasping the final few steps over the summit while looking over their shoulder, the NCAA tournament. The coach says that's a sprint, and if Nebraska breaks the tape first with 6 more wins, it'll be the first team in school history to repeat as national champions. He knows these Huskers run faster when they're chasing something rather than being chased. This now feels like we've got to go for it and try to do something nobody else has ever done, Cook said. It's a whole different feel and mindset to me. I feel like our players have a little bounce in our step right now, added libero Justin Wong-Orentes. We won the Big Ten, but now it doesn't matter anymore. Now everyone's going for the national championship. This year is the first that instant replay will be used in the NCAA tournament, but only in the Final Four. NU has used instant replay at the Devaney Center for the last 2 seasons. The NCAA has left it up to individual conferences to decide if schools had the option to use replay, and it still isn't standard nationwide. The decision not to use video review at host sites with the capability left Cook frustrated. He said all 4 of the head coaches coming to Lincoln agreed to petition the NCAA Championship Committee to use replay in the first and second round matches at the Devaney Center with their unanimous consent. Cook said the NCAA official denied the request because replay would not be used at every site. We saw last year that there were some major calls in the NCAA tournament that probably cost some teams a chance to win national championships, he said. To me, it's a mind-boggling why we haven't mandated this. It's not that expensive.
Indiana coach Kevin Wilson abruptly resigned Thursday, less than a week after the Hoosiers became bowl eligible for the 2nd straight season. Athletic Director Fred Glass made the announcement during a hastily arranged news conference in Bloomington, Indiana, and cited philosophical differences with Wilson. There were reports that Wilson had pushed players to return from injury, and Glass said the issue was looked into by a law firm hired by the university. Glass said no potential NCAA violations were involved. He said he and Wilson met early Thursday and continued a discussion they'd been having for a few weeks, with both concluding a change was needed. Defensive coordinator Tom Allen was promoted to take Wilson's job effective immediately. That at least avoids a coaching search, even as Indiana, now 6-6 and 4-5 in the Big Ten, waits to find out which bowl game it will play in. But there was little doubt the resignation was unexpected. Central Florida's Scott Frost said he isn't a candidate for the Oregon coaching job and is committed to staying at UCF. Frost, the quarterback on Nebraska's 1997 national championship team, said Thursday that he's happy in Orlando and wants to continue building on the strides the Knights took this year in his first season at the American Athletic Conference School. Frost was the wide receivers coach at Oregon from 2009 to 12 under Chip Kelly, and offensive coordinator when Mark Helfrich took over in 2013. Frost went 6 for 6 in his first season at UCF after inheriting a program that went 0 for 12 in 2015. Event, Charles Harris says he'll skip his senior season and declare himself draft eligible for the NFL. The 6'3", 260-pound Harris made his announcement Thursday, less than a week after Missouri closed out a season in which he tallied 61 tackles, a career high and the most this year by a Southeastern Conference lineman. The fourth-year junior from Kansas City, Missouri, also had a career-best 9 sacks this season and 18 over his career with the Tigers.
In golf news from Nassau, Bahamas, not only did Tiger Woods return to golf Thursday, he returned to being Tiger. Just not for long. Hardly looking like a player who had not competed in 466 days, Woods ran off 3 straight birdies with a variety of shots and was tied for a lead in the Hero World Challenge as he approached the turn. 3 shots in the bushes, 1 shot in the water, and a few fits of anger sent him toward the bottom of the pack. A pair of double bogeys over the final 3 holes ruined an otherwise impressive return, and Woods shot 40 on the back 9 at Albany Golf Club and had to settle for 1 over 73. He was in 17th place in the 18-man field. Only Justin Rose had a higher score. Even so, Woods has reason to be encouraged. After taking off 15 months to recover from 2 back surgeries, he felt no pain or limitations. His misses were not big, just costly, and he was playing again. I could have been something really good, Woods said. I got off to a nice start, solid start, and made a few mistakes there. I didn't play the par 5s very well in the middle part of the round and consequently got it going the wrong way. But all in all, I feel pretty good. I'm looking forward to another 3 more days. He has 9 shots behind J.B. Holmes, who opened with an 8 under 64 and had a 1-shot lead over Hideki Matsuyama with U.S. Open champion Dustin Johnson at 66. Curiosity was greater than expectations for Woods, who was coming off the longest hiatus of his golfing life. Plagued by back problems since 2013 when he was number 1 in the world, he finally shut it down after tying for 10th in the Wyndham Championship on August 23, 2015, and then went through 2 back surgeries. He was in so much pain last year, there were times he wondered if he had played his last tournament. With high anticipation, he tugged his opening tee shot into the rough on the left edge of the bunker and gouged that out to 15 feet for par. Just like that, it all started to feel as though he had never been away. By the time I hit my tee shot on the 2nd hole, I had already gotten into the flow of the round, Woods said. That's something that, for me, when I've taken layoffs and taken breaks, it's how quickly can I feel the round. To not play in 15, 16 months and to get it on the 2nd hole is nice. In other news, at Gold Coast, Australia, Australians Andrew Dott and Ashley Hall and American Harold Varner III shared the Australian PGA Championship lead Friday at 7 under 64 after the rain-delayed first round. At Malane, South Africa, defending champion Carl Schwartzel birdied the last hole for a share of the first round lead with Paul Dunn at 6 under 66 in the European Tour's Alfred Dunn Championship.
And from the Bahamas, not only did Tiger Woods return to golf Thursday, he returned to being Tiger.
That's what I just read.
Yeah, but not for long. Let's take on AIA volleyball. Number 2, Viterbo rallied in the 3rd set to sweep number 15 Doan 25-21, 25-17, 28-26 during pool play Thursday at the NAIA Volleyball Championship at the Tyson Event Center in Sioux City. Despite the loss, the Tigers, who finished 2-1 in pool play, will advance to bracket play with which begins Friday. Creek graduate Caitlin Bradley led the Tigers with 12 kills, and Macy Coffey added 10. 3 Viterbo players had double-digit kills as Viterbo hit 306 for the match compared to 181 for Doan. Doan jumped to an early lead in the 3rd set and took a 26-25 lead on a block from North Star graduate Katie Hitz. But Viterbo rattled off the final 3 points, closing the match on a Tiger hitting error. Doan will play number 17 Columbia at 9 a.m. on Friday. And Sage Meyer had 17 kills, 8 digs, and 3 blocks, and the Broncos concluded pool play with a 25-15, 25-18, 16-25, 25-18 win. Hastings went 3-0 in pool play and advances to the bracket tournament. Katie Black added 10 kills, 18 assists, 8 digs, and 6 blocks, and Lincoln Southwest graduate Jill Bax had 30 digs for the number 3 Broncos, now 29-3. A kill by Myers sparked a 10-3 run for the Broncos in the fourth set. After trailing 22-12, Missouri Baptist cut the deficit to 22-18. But a kill from Andrea Jameson and a block from Jameson and Plack clinched the win for Hastings. And it is top of the hour, so time for us to make way for other programming on the Radio Talking Book Network. I'm Ralph Morocco, and it's been my pleasure to be with you this morning. Look forward to doing it again next week.
And this is Bob Gotting. It has been a pleasure reading for you today, and get ready for some colder weather. But have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you next week.
And thank you, gentlemen, very, very much. Thank you, Bob Gotting.
Sounds like it's going to get really cold.
Your time so that we can be kept informed.
We're going to try to get the last mowing in. Are you kicking us out?
Hey, we're kicking you out.
Oh,
You're not just like
We've got